Alright, it's review time, a-holes. That's right, you've been warned. This is my spoiler review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So unless you do not care about spoilers for the film or have seen the film, go and watch the film first before you watch this video. So in this video, I'm going to be covering a lot of ground of the more finer plot points of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So you have been warned. Now, as I said in my spoiler-free review, this film focuses very much on a trip to save the life of one of their own, and it does actually focus a lot more on Rocket Raccoon, and in particular, his origins of sorts. I say origins because they are told by way of flashbacks in his mind as he is suffering and on his deathbed. And these flashbacks kind of tell the story of him and how the High Evolutionary kind of came into what he is now. You see him in the flashbacks looking very different from what he is looking like in present day. And as I said before in my spoiler-free review, it does focus on the subjects of PTSD and trauma, and Rocket Raccoon's origins are very deeply rooted in that. The other Guardians films have given the hint occasionally that there is something a lot more going on with Rocket and what he is and where he came from. And this film really deep dives into that. I mean, it dives into it in so much as they probably could have taken all of the stuff that is Rocket Raccoon in this film, put it into a different film of its own, and still being left with enough Guardians stuff going on to have a full Guardians of the Galaxy film. There is that much stuff to explore about Rocket. Now, granted, the whole other stuff to do with Rocket may not have made up a full 2-hour-long film, but I do feel like that could have been covered, maybe in a Rocket and Groot series. So you're kind of getting the backstory of Rocket Raccoon, a little bit of backstory of Groot, and maybe how they came to meet one another, and some of their adventures after that, that then ties into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But I feel like the one thing that stopped them from doing that is the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy are very much their own thing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And because of that, they didn't want to have too much other necessary reading before going into this film. So I felt like they didn't want to have you have to go, oh, well, in order to understand what's going on in this, you need to have seen this, you need to have seen this, you need to have seen this. It's just a case of, hey, if you've watched Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but missed Avengers Endgame for whatever reason, then, hey, we've got enough in here that you can catch up, so you're not lost. So all you need to do is be a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, and we've got your back. But because of that deep dive into Rocket's backstory, I do feel like the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 took on a very much darker tone than the other films. There were a lot of moments of really tense, heightened emotion, which does kind of make sense because you've been on this journey with the other Guardians of the Galaxy through this trilogy, and knowing that this is somewhat of an end point for them, it is going to be very emotionally charged, so it's going to have a different feel to it. But also, like I said, they do manage to squeeze in these moments of natural Guardians of the Galaxy shenanigans that still happen, but it's never felt forced, which is great because James Gunn knows how to include these moments without them being forced. And Drax is stealing the show, as always, with being the king of these kinds of moments. He does manage to break the tension just by being him in his own character, and that's kind of a really good thing behind why he's part of the Guardians. He isn't just the muscle, he is part of the comedy as well by being him. And I saw an interview, in fact, I think it was Hot Ones, with Bryan Cranston, and he said at no point can someone who is delivering a comedy line think that what they're doing is funny. And Drax is the absolute embodiment of that. At no point does he deliberately try to be silly or stupid. He just is what he is, other than the scene-stealing moment that he had with the captive children on the High Evolutionary ship, because that was a whole other side of Drax that we saw in this film that was very, very welcomed. In fact, at the end of this film, someone does say to him that he was never meant to be a destroyer. He was always meant to be a father. And that's something that you look back on his character and go, yes, throughout the whole Guardians franchise, Drax has been building up towards being a father, and it just makes sense. Now, I didn't cover it in my spoiler-free review because even though it's obvious that the character is in the film, I didn't actually want to talk too much about Adam Warlock, because I felt like if I had started to talk about Adam Warlock, all that I would have talked about is how little he's actually in this film. It never really felt like Adam Warlock was tacked on in this film, but it did feel like he didn't really have a natural place. What it felt like happened was the execs at Marvel said to James Gunn, you know that you teased Adam Warlock at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and we kind of haven't seen him since, so are we gonna see him in this film, or is that gonna be something else that happens entirely? Because kind of feels like you need to follow up on that. And James Gunn kind of went, yeah, I did. And I wasn't going to include him, but I do have this space in this film for one character that needs to do some stuff. So I guess I could have Adam Warlock do that? So yeah, it is a good character to finally see in the films, but he just doesn't feel like he does all too much. And I feel like he got introduced in this film, and we'll maybe see some more of him later on down the line, and maybe that is the way that this Guardians of the Galaxy film feeds into other things that happen in Phase 5. Ultimately, Adam Warlock just kind of existed. And it's a little bit of a shame, really, because I would have liked to have seen Will Poulter really do some stuff with this character, and ultimately you don't see him get to do much with what he's been given. So hopefully we will see him explore that a little bit more at some point. It was still cool to see this character, again, feel like he got underused with the power set that he has, where essentially he's kind of a rival in power level to Captain Marvel. Now obviously, where Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has very much been advertised as the final outing for this iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy, there are numerous moments throughout the film where it's kind of set up that some characters might get offed. And that includes Drax, Rocket throughout the majority of the film, and at the end, Star-Lord. Even though these moments of peril never fully get realized, and no one fully gets offed in this film, I still feel the natural end of the Guardians of the Galaxy was very satisfying in the way that they handled it. Now, this is very much a double-edged sword for me, because I still feel like Marvel as a whole are very reluctant to stick to a firm status quo of changing or writing out characters permanently in the franchise that they're in, or introducing new ones that take their place. I feel like at the end of these films, the status quo of each of the characters is still very much what it was at the start. I feel like after Avengers Endgame, Marvel have basically gone, no, we're not going to kill any more characters outrightly at this point, because we've done that for now. But we've shown that characters can die, and we're still going to hold that danger over audiences' head. So it could happen, it couldn't happen, but ultimately, no, we're not going to kill any more characters. And I feel like there's never really that aspect of danger. I felt like it was heightened in this film, knowing that this is the last Guardians of the Galaxy of at least this iteration, so some of them could well have died. But the other side of that coin is that the natural progression of each of the characters and the way that it ends felt right. So there is a change in the status quo by the end of this film that does mean this group of Guardians of the Galaxy is different from any others that you will see later on. And it felt natural, it didn't feel forced, people didn't have to die in order for that to change. It felt good to see that. It felt good to see a change in status quo at the end of the film, even though characters didn't need to have died to have brought that about. And I feel like the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy has shown that this is possible, that just hits different. Now also, as I said in my spoiler-free review, I just want to reiterate it again, the High Evolutionary made for such a great character in this film, and he's probably one of the best, most egomaniacal villains that you've seen in recent Marvel history. And I know that lately, ever since Thanos in particular, Marvel have been going off of this idea that every villain is the hero in their own story. But it was kind of refreshing to have a villain that was so solely focused on achieving something that ethics and morals didn't touch them. So what they were trying to achieve in their own mind was essentially perfection, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to have something that's perfect. It's a good thing to have that utopia. But the fact that they were operating in a fashion that meant that ethics and morals meant nothing to them turned that on its head and made them a villain. And his line at the end that I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, where he said, "God doesn't exist, which is why I stepped in," that was a line that was of Thanos proportions. That was a line that I genuinely think topped this character as a villain above Kang. Kang just wants to conquer all realities and everything like that. You know, he just wants to take over, he wants to have all of these different variants, he operates outside of time and space. Yeah, great, fine. The High Evolutionary wants to achieve perfection at any cost and will do literally whatever it takes to get perfection. That is Thanos and Kang levels of villainy right there. Now, one thing that I did want to mention in this spoiler review that I didn't talk about earlier, and it doesn't revolve around any character deaths, and it doesn't revolve around any trauma, and it doesn't revolve around the plot as a whole, but it was one of my favourite moments of the entire film, and I now firmly believe that every great character or every great series is only as good as their hallway fight scene. Daredevil had it, Spider-Man had it, I'm pretty sure John Wick had it, and now The Mandalorian has it. And now the Guardians of the Galaxy have their full, amazing, slow motion in and out, one-shot camera panning group fight scene in a hallway, and it honestly blew my mind. I had a smile 6 feet wide across my face. Like, I looked like the Joker watching this moment play out on the screen because it was so cool. And yeah, there will probably be a lot of people that pick moments out from it and go, oh, well, you know, the CGI looked a little ropey in this bit. Do you know what? This had some of the best CGI that I've seen in a Marvel film for quite a while, and I knew that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to step up the visual effects game in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and prove once again what Marvel can do with their visual effects after things like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania looked like it was shot against a green screen. And this hallway fight scene was one of those moments. It just looked brilliant from start to finish, and honestly might be one of the coolest moments of all of the Guardians franchise. So essentially, as I said in my spoiler-free review, I am very, very happy and satisfied with this film and it being the ending of an era for Guardians of the Galaxy. Someone I saw the film with said, yeah, this was a great film, but I don't feel like I would watch it again anytime soon. And that kind of stuck with me because it's like, yeah, there were less fun moments in this than there were in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 or the first one. I don't feel like it stands up to as many rewatches as the other two, because this film deals with the ending of an era and it deals with characters' trauma and the resolution of that, so it does have that darker tone to it. I still feel like I would wait a little while and watch it again. It got me at some moments in this film. There were a lot of heavy moments, and I feel like there is a little bit of a cool down time after this film where you do need to emotionally recharge from it. That being said, I am likely to watch this again in the near future. Maybe not at the cinema. Maybe I will wait until it's available at home and have another evening to myself watching it again, getting some more analysing of some parts, maybe see if there's some other little like Easter egg parts in it. Essentially, like I said, very, very happy with this final Guardians of the Galaxy installment, at least of this iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy, because in the mid-credits scene you do see Rocket leading a new team of Guardians, which I get the sense that might be something that they could potentially pick up on in later films. Maybe it'll be addressed in Avengers Secret Wars or Avengers Kang Dynasty at some point. And it did also say the legendary Star-Lord will return. Again, in what capacity that is, I don't know. I doubt that Star-Lord will get his own spin-off series or spin-off film, but I reckon he maybe might make an appearance in some things now that he is back on Earth and living a life on Earth as a regular guy. Maybe we'll see him appear as a cameo in some other things that are also set firmly on Earth. Who knows? But as always, all comments and speculation on the future of the Guardians of the Galaxy characters and franchise are welcome in the comments section below. Let's talk nerdy. As always, if you've enjoyed what you've seen here and you would like to see more, you can click right here to see some more funky, fresh videos from yours truly. And until that point, I want it to be on record at the end of this video. I didn't want to say it earlier, but I want to go on record now as saying, yes, I did cry in this film, but it was only just a little bit, and I'm proud of that.